Hey, welcome to our Elevate Online experience. We've given our regular hosts, Tom and Kelly, a little bit of a break, so I'm just substituting in today, but it's certainly fantastic to have you with us, especially those of you joining us for the first time. We're actually launching a new mini-series today, and I will be talking about that a little bit later on. But great to have you here. Don't forget to lean in and let's see God speak to us and transform us through our time together. Hey, I want to say thanks and well done to those of you that have already subscribed to our channel. If you haven't yet, then I encourage you to do so. It's real simple. You can click the subscribe button if you're watching here on YouTube, and also like us or follow us on Facebook. And we'd certainly love you to share this with your friends. You know, we hope that the content that we're producing every single week is being helpful to you, and possibly you know someone else that could be helped as well. So subscribe, like, share, and you won't miss a thing from one week to the next. Well, we've got a growing number of worship partners from around the world who are making what they're producing available to us, and that we can actually then deliver it to you as part of our Elevate Online experience. So today's worship partner is Highlands Worship from Birmingham, Alabama. And I like to encourage you, when I get the opportunity, to say that our online experience isn't a spectator sport. We're going to have the music going, and it's going to have the lyrics along the screen as well. So you can worship from wherever you are. Encourage you to join in, and let's worship together.
Jesus You're seated on the throne. Nothing can stand against you, Lord. Who is like the Lord? Strong in battle. Who is like the Lord? Mighty to save. Who is like the Lord? King forever. Oh, Jesus reigns. Jesus reigns. Who is like the Lord?
Hey, don't let this be the only time during the week that you do actually worship with music. In fact, we make it available to you with our Elevate Current Tunes Spotify playlist. And we update that with some fresh content every 2 weeks. So jump onto Spotify, find us, as I said, Elevate Current Tunes. Look for Elevate Church AU or Elevate Church Perth. And you can then worship anywhere, anytime, wherever you've got access to Spotify. Well, as I already mentioned, today we're launching a brand new mini-series. It's called Dark Horses, and I'm going to be teaching. So great to have you with us for the start of this new series, and I really do trust that God's going to speak to you and going to encourage you to do the things, the significant things that He's called you to. Well, hey there to our Elevate family. Great to have you with us this week as we launch a new mini-series. We've just finished a mini-series called Don't Take the Bait, and I cannot recommend strongly enough that you go back and watch that either on this platform, or you can actually find that on any of the major podcast platforms. 2-week series, Don't Take the Bait. This is a 2-week mini-series we've called Dark Horses. Now, this concept or this phrase, dark horse, I'm sure is familiar to most of you. But just to be sure, let me define terms right at the outset of this series. A dark horse is a little known person, unlikely to succeed, who ultimately accomplishes great things. And we love a good dark horse story. I mean, Hollywood knows this. Stories like Rocky, Rudy, Braveheart, and Gladiator, to name just a few. And all of them have essentially the same storyline. You know, take the hero at the end of the movie starts out as a little known person. Nobody thought they could do anything special. And ultimately, they exceeded expectations. They accomplished something significant that nobody really thought they could do that. And if you're anything like me, you watch these movies and you come away pumped up. You're like, oh man, you know, that would be amazing, like to have that kind of thing happen to me. And then your kids start screaming, what's for dinner? Your boss emails you telling you that report that you submitted was wrong and you have to start over. You remember it's bin day tomorrow and you're dragging your wheelie bins down the driveway thinking to yourself, I bet Russell Crowe doesn't have to drag wheelie bins down the driveway. And all of a sudden, us being pumped up and inspired tends to be overshadowed by normal life. What I want to do in this mini-series is look at a couple of people who were dark horses, a couple of people who achieved significant things for God, who very much started out as a dark horse. Today, that dark horse is a guy named Gideon. Now, let me start at the end of the story, the high point of Gideon's story. Now, Gideon was an Israelite, part of the people of Israel, and the people of Israel had been under oppression by a group called the Midianites. And the Midianites had held the Israelites under oppression for decades upon decades upon decades. And at one point in history, God tapped a guy named Gideon to lead an uprising against the Midianites to ultimately overthrow them and have the Israelites become free. Well, Gideon got to a point where he was able to rally so much enthusiasm and so much excitement around the Israelites that thousands of Israelite men signed up to go into battle with Gideon. But God, he said, no, there's too many people, too many soldiers. In fact, if this army with this number goes into battle, you're too likely to take the credit for yourselves. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to slash the numbers. So he slashed the numbers and then said, no, still too many. So he slashed the numbers again. In fact, he got down to 300 soldiers, the original 300 movie right here, who were due to face off against 100,000 Midianites. Well, spoiler, Gideon's 300 ultimately overthrew the 100,000 Midianites. And this story is a preacher's paradise. You know, we're all about if God is for you, who could be against you? You and God are always a majority. There's all you see is not all there is. And every single one of those things is true. And we focus on the big finale, the crescendo of this story. But look, if the MCU has taught us anything, it's that the origin story is also important. So look, if you've got your Bible app, how about we jump into Judges chapter 6? Judges chapter 6 is where we're going to see Gideon's origin story. And remember, he finished as a hero. He finished as like the leader of this army that was able to lead the Israelites to defeat the Midianites. But here's the origin story. Verse 6, the people of Israel, reduced to grinding poverty by Midian, cried out to God for help. Well, there's a pro tip right there. Well, one day the angel of God came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abizarite, whose son Gideon was threshing wheat in the winepress out of sight of the Midianites. So here's a clue to the sort of person that God was tapping. This guy who was actually hiding from the Midianites, not the one that you'd expect was going to lead them into battle and lead them into victory. No, he was actually hiding from the Midianites. In fact, here's a winepress from that particular time in history. You'll notice that it's underground. He wasn't pressing wine in the wine press. He was threshing wheat. This is not what the wine press was designed for. In fact, if you're threshing wheat, you need to be above ground, because what you're going to do is you're going to throw the wheat up in the air. The wind will catch the chaff and blow that away, and the kernels, which are heavier, are going to fall back to the ground. So he wasn't really doing the job that he was given to do. He was just hiding. And the angel of God appeared to him and said, God is with you, O mighty warrior. You're like, huh? What? The guy is hiding in a wine press, and God calls him, labels him mighty warrior. This is a big, big, big disconnect. So no surprise that Gideon replied, with me, my master. Look, if God is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all the miracle wonders our parents and grandparents told us about, telling us, didn't God deliver us from Egypt? Look, the fact is God has nothing to do with us. He's turned us over to Midian. But God faced him directly. Now go in the strength that is yours. Again, seems like a contradiction. Save Israel from Midian. Haven't I just sent you? Well, Gideon said to him, me, my master, how and with what could I ever save Israel? I mean, look at me. My clan's the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the runt of the litter. God said to him, no, I'll be with you. Believe me. You'll defeat Midian as one man. So here we have God calling Gideon very specifically to do something significant for him. And all Gideon could see and all Gideon could say is just how inadequate he felt. he kept on throwing these things up. How and with what could I ever save Israel? I mean, look at me. My clan's the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the runt of the litter. And so this is not unusual. And potentially you've felt this in your life. God's been calling you to do something, and yet you're on the other side of the threshold feeling inadequate. I could never do that. And cropping yourself out of this ever being the case and having focused on your inadequacy, you never get to do the thing that God's called you to do. So we need to learn how to bridge the inadequacy gap. But before we get to that, let's maybe just drill into some of the reasons that people find themselves feeling inadequate. Maybe some of the reasons you've found yourself on occasions feeling inadequate. Maybe even right now, God's calling you to do something, and yet you're standing on the other side, just focusing on your feelings of inadequacy. Well, it could be the result of unrealistic criticism. And I'd like to put to you that this is the main one and the obvious one. You know, I've shared before that when I was in year 10, I was at a careers expo at my school, and I was talking when I should have been listening, playing Chatty Charlie when I should have been paying attention to the teacher. And the teacher pointed at me in front of all of my fellow year 10 students and said, "You'll never amount to anything." Not cool. And look, maybe you can relate. Maybe you were told growing up that you're worthless, that you'll never amount to anything, that you'll never do anything significant with your life. Could have been a teacher, could have been a parent, could have been an ex-partner. You know, someone who should have been building the foundations of our lives, but instead they were actually taking pieces out of the foundations. And as a consequence, you may have been left with just this lingering doubt, this lingering feeling of inadequacy. And as a result of that, you know, you didn't even try to do some of the things that God's called you to do it because you assume that you can't. Here's the less obvious one, but nevertheless highly pervasive, and that is unrealistic compliments. See, some of us set our kids up for potential disappointment by saying something to the effect of, "You can be anything you want to be if you just put your mind to it." Now, I'm all for encouragement. I am all for affirmation. I'm all for aspiration. But the reality is that we can't build on what God didn't install. And so there are some certain things that we're never going to be. There's certain things that we're never going to do because God didn't call us to those things. God didn't put in us the sorts of things that we need to get to that. So this makes me, I'm aware on the surface, this makes me sound like I'm a bit cynical and a bit negative if I say you can't do anything if you put your mind to it. For me, in my early 20s, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls were blowing up, winning championships, and NBA was on every TV. And I'd never played basketball in my life, but I got the itch. I started to think, I'm gonna learn how to play basketball, and I'm gonna get good at this game. And so I started practicing every afternoon down at the local school and doing drills and I was terrible. The film White Man Can't Jump, that was me. That film was made about my life. Not really. But if someone had said to me, you know, Mark, you can be the next Michael Jordan if you just put your mind to it, that would have been irresponsible because God didn't put in me the calling or the ability to become the next Michael Jordan. And The reason this can hold us back is that if we are told that there's these benchmarks that we will just inevitably hit if we work hard enough, that God didn't necessarily call us to, then when we invariably don't hit them, it leaves this lingering sense of inadequacy. Well, my mom told me I could do that, and I didn't, so obviously I'm not as good as everyone told me I was. And this is the third thing that I think causes or creates a sense of inadequacy, and that's unrealistic comparison. Now, comparison is not something new, but it sure has been amplified in the era of social media, where we have got everyone else's highlight reel in our pocket, in our hand, on our screens, anytime we want. And it's created, or it has us living in the land of Ur. The land of Ur is that no matter how smart you are, there's always someone smarter. No matter how happy and content you feel, there's always somebody that appears happier. No matter how much financial security, how rich you feel, there's always someone richer. And this can just wear us down and leave us with a feeling of inadequacy. Now, comparison can be good. Comparison can show us clues from other people who are perhaps ahead of us that we can learn from. These people can inspire us. But look, if God hasn't called us to be them, to do what they're doing, then at some point comparison becomes unhealthy. So if you're living on the wrong side of the inadequacy gap, God's calling you to do something and you're reminding him why you can't, here's a few things that we can learn from Gideon's interaction with God and God's interaction with Gideon that can help us bridge the inadequacy gap. See, Gideon said to God, "Me, my master, how and with what could I ever save Israel? I mean, look at me. My clan's the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the runt of the litter." This is Gideon telling God what he doesn't have. This is Gideon telling God how inadequate he is. And God spoke truth into Gideon's situation and said, no, I'm calling you mighty warrior. You're not who destructive people said you are. You're not what your past failures say you are. You're not even the moments of doubt and inadequacy, even if there's a hint of truth in them. You're not who they say you are, and you certainly aren't who the devil, who's a liar, says you are. And this is how we start to learn to bridge the inadequacy gap. You are who God says you are. And that's the reality. And that has to start to become the confession. I may have made mistakes in my past. I may have failed at some things. I may have had some people tear me down, pull me down. But if God's calling me to it, then I'm going to listen to who he says I am and get about it. So God then says to Gideon, go in the strength that is yours. And this word go means go. You don't have to have a Bible college degree to understand that. God's saying, I'm not your Uber driver. You need to go. You need to go. And as long as you're hiding in a wine press, you're never going to bridge the inadequacy gap, and you're never going to accomplish significant things. But here's the beauty. God saw strength in Gideon. And that's another way we bridge the inadequacy gap, to understand that God sees more in you than you see in yourself. So stop telling God what you don't have and start using what you do have and see God work a miracle in that. And then Gideon, he wasn't done yet. But God gave him the final reassurance. God said to him, I'll be with you. Believe me, you'll defeat Midian as one man, but with me. You know, I talked about my brief and highly unsuccessful foray into basketball. But just imagine this for a moment. My mates, when I tried to play against them 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, they would wipe the court with me. I mean, they were good and I was terrible. But can you imagine if just by some miracle, Nike sponsored Michael Jordan to come over here to Perth, and Michael Jordan had said to me back then, hey Mark, challenge your mates to a game of 2-on-2 and I'll be with you. I would have said, yeah, great idea, Mike. And I would have done that because of the assurance that Michael Jordan would have been with me. Well, God, when he calls us to something, he gives us the assurance that he will be with us. We have to go, we have to use what's in our hand, and all the while, God is with us. And that I hope, gives us the courage to step across and bridge the inadequacy gap. So today, my question that I want to leave you with is there something that God is calling you to do right now in this season of your life that you may have been holding back from? You may have been stepping away from. You may have been trying to deflect because you felt you couldn't do it. You felt inadequate. And if so, then I hope you are inspired by Gideon to know that if God's calling you to do it, that you have what it takes and he'll be with you. So step out, go in the strength that God's given you, and let's see you, the dark horse, accomplish significant things that God's called you to. Hey, one of the things that makes it possible for us as Elevate Church to reach people and to build people is financially giving. And so we're so grateful for both our Perth Hub people who consistently give and for our Elevate Hub people, family, who consistently give. So those of you that have been giving consistently, thank you. You are part of causing us to go further faster when it comes to our mission of reaching people and building people. And look, if you haven't yet started giving, I encourage you, maybe today's the day. Take that step of faith, and all the ways to give are on the screen below. Never been easier, and we say thank you in advance for that. Now, next week, we're continuing this series. It's just a 2-part series, so next week's the second and final installment of Dark Horses. We're going to be looking at another dark horse that God used to do significant things. So love you to join us then. How about maybe you invite someone along to sit on the couch with you, be part of it. And until then, have a great week. See you then.